Welcome to day 16 of the 21 Days of Prayer podcast with REVO Church. I've loved going through 2 weeks of praying together because we have all different people from all three campuses, all walks of life. We've got REVO staff members and REVO Church members who are just a part of this podcast, sharing their insights on the days that they wrote for us to pray through and enjoy together. And so today, I have the expert on day 16 with me. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
All right. Hey, guys. My name is Kirby Hall, and I attend the REVO South Fork location.
Well, thanks for being here today, Kirby. Excited to have her. I loved reading day 16. Hopefully, if you guys have read it, you're enjoying it as well. You wrote on Galatians 6, which is talking about bearing one another's burdens, as well as Job chapter 2, which is a very interesting connection there. I want to know how you connected Galatians 6, bearing one another's burdens, all of that with the spiritual discipline of prayer.
Yeah. So I thought originally when I received the content, I thought, oh goodness, how am I going to compare these two? Like, how am I going to take something that Paul wrote in Galatians,
right,
hundreds, if not thousands of years after the story of Job happened, right? How am I going to correlate the two? And then when I really looked at the passage, Galatians 6:2 talks about bearing one another's burdens, which obviously implies community. You can't bear somebody's burden if you don't know who they are.
True.
But then when you look at the story of Job and we know the destruction and just the absolute loss that he went through, we see his friends just abandon everything and come beside of him to bear his burden with him. And I thought that was just such a cool correlation.
Yeah, that is a neat connection. And what's interesting about Job is that his friends come in and they are there with him, which is like, that's number one thing. You know, when something like that happens, you want to go and be with the person. Yeah. And then they open their mouths and start to say a lot of dumb things.
Yeah.
But it's it's like, it's the thought that counts, right? They're at least there to help in the initial beginning. And they say some true and good things. But I love your connection of thinking that, you've got to know someone in order to bear their burden. Yeah. I mean, even if you don't have the ability to go and see them, or you just know them maybe peripherally, you can still have a way to bear their burden by praying for them. And so, that's a great connection.
Yeah. Well, when I was thinking about, I grew up in a very Baptist church, so we did a lot of alliterations, right?
Yes,
and when I was thinking about it, when I was thinking about it, the two things that jumped out at me were, first, you had to be intimate with somebody to know what's going on in their lives. Like, in passing, if you just know somebody very superficially, unless they're one of those people that shares everything on Facebook or social media, you might not know what's going on in their lives. And so to fully know and to bear somebody's burden, you have to get to know that person. You have to reach out or spend time getting to know them. And that led me to the idea of intentionality. Like, that does not happen overnight. Yeah,
Intimate
2 eyes.
And intentional. Man, love that.
It doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen per chance. I mean, God certainly brings people together and you just kind of click. But through our groups, through church on Sunday mornings, through serving, you build these relationships. And then as you intentionally take time to reach out to them, intentionally spend time in prayer for them, that connection grows, and then you're more able to bear their burdens because now you have that connection.
Yeah. I got to stop you because you pointed out a really key point when you said that you don't just form these relationships and that's how you connect with them deeper, but then you also said, and you pray for them, which that's something I've experienced is true 100% is God does I don't even know how, the Bible doesn't really explain what goes on, but when you pray for someone, God does a spiritual work in your heart to knit your heart to them and to their situation.
Well, and I think that's why the Bible talks so often about even praying for your enemies.
Yeah.
Is it's really hard to dislike or hate or harbor bad feelings towards somebody when you're genuinely praying for them.
Right.
God will soften your heart and he will change your heart and he will bring things to you that maybe you had not considered before.
Yeah, that's great. Like I said, that's why we've got the expert on day 16 here with us today. I wanted to ask you a question about your devotional that you wrote for day 16. If you could point out one important point, something that you said, hey, if nothing else, I want to make sure that you guys get this. What would it be?
I think when looking at the two passages, Job's friends had to give something up to bear his burdens. They sat next to him for a week. They shredded their clothing and they sat next to him in the ash and grieved for 7 days.
Yeah.
And that gave up time and money, I'm sure, from jobs, time with their family, time with their friends, time from their responsibilities, money in the fact that like they tore their clothes and like, you know, now you have to replace that. So I think bearing somebody's burden sounds really nice. It sounds really like a good thing to do, a good Christian thing to do, but it's going to take something from you.
To be able to understand. It's going to have both of that. It's going to give something to you, as Jesus says, it's more blessed to give than to receive. But at the same time, also, it's really going to cost something if you're going to really fulfill, as Galatians 6 says, fulfill the law of Christ and bear one another's burdens. It costs Jesus everything. So it's going to cost us a little bit. And like the original phrase for bear was like the word that I looked up meant that you physically cannot do it alone. Like you physically cannot carry whatever burden you have. And I think that points to the fact that we're going to have burdens that we can't bear alone. Like that's why it's in the Bible, you know, like God knew. So having that somebody that can come next to you and say like, hey, I'm going to lend a prayer. I'm going to let you know that I'm praying for you every day. And I'm going to be genuine in that. Like that does so much, not only for you as the person who's praying, but also for the person that you're praying for. Yeah. That's great. That's great. I love that. So as we close it down, let's think about one thing, one next step, one practical application point, some way that you could challenge the listeners of the podcast and the readers of day 16 of the 21 days of prayer. What would be the one thing you would say, hey, this is something you can do today or this week to put this into practice? Yeah, I think really the idea of being intentional. Right? So reach out to somebody who maybe you've heard through the grapevine, like they're struggling, they're going through something, or maybe you just haven't seen them at church in a while, or you just miss them. Like we did the whole Experiencing God Bible study not long ago. And something that they really focused on was like, you don't just think of people randomly for no reason. Like if you think of them, reach out to them, text them. You have no idea what's going on in their day, whether it's a verse or just like, hey, been praying for you. How you doing? You know, that I think is like the big next step is like, don't be an island. Reach out to the people around you, bring them into community and help bear their burdens. That's challenging for me. I tend to be, here's a third eye for you. I tend to be more introverted. And I'm more island-like. But I know that, like you say, you can't bear one of those burdens if you don't know. Talk a lot about technology and like how maybe it's not the greatest thing, but also how great is it? Like to just be able to send a text. Like you can still be an introvert and text somebody. You know, that doesn't like you're not inviting them out for coffee or inviting them over to your house and like welcoming them into your space. You're just sending a text to let them know that you're thinking of them. No, that's great. Love that. So there's a challenge for today. Think of somebody and don't just think, but also think about what you're thinking about and know that God has put that person on your mind for a reason. There's no coincidences as a Christian. And so when that person's name pops into your head, it could be what God has for you to do maybe today or this afternoon or this week. If somebody pop it in your head, send them a text, shoot it to them and ask them how you can bear their burden, how you can love them and serve them in the way that Christ has loved and served us. So thanks for joining us for day 16 of the 21 Days of Prayer podcast. I hope that God uses this to spark a revolution of life change in your heart and in your life through Jesus today. We'll see you guys tomorrow.